In the proud spirit of America and in the proud spirit of our great country,
I just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your United States Navy, honoring the land of the free.
This is the land of the free, home of the brave. Happy 4th of July.
Okay, next up, we have two strapping young lads, Alan and Alex from TPUSA and their high school division of Club America. Just want to give you guys a heads up. We now have an Onslow County Club America. We are trying to build up. I am the facilitator of that group currently. Our next meeting is August 14th at 6 p.m. If you need more information, please reach out to me or look us up. We do have a Facebook page, an Instagram, and a TikTok, or like my dad says, the tiki-taki for some reason. But without further ado, please come on up, Alex. I believe Alan is here somewhere. Oh, okay.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Alex and I am the high school field representative for Turning Point USA. I'm going to address the, thank you. I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I am not in high school. I'm a little bit older than that, but that's probably why they hired me. But let me start with this. This morning, along with almost every morning, I did something that I try to avoid. Can anyone take a guess?
Yes.
My snooze button. I hit snooze not only once, not twice, 3 times this morning, and I do it almost every morning. Statistically speaking, 50% of the general population hits snooze. Where am I going with that? After September 10th, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, my generation, high schoolers in particular, realized, man, we don't want to hit snooze with our conservative values anymore. And so since September 10th, when Charlie went home to see his savior, this generation, my generation, rose up and said, we're not hitting snooze no more, and we're getting involved. And so since then, I started the job last July, had about 10 chapters across half of North Carolina. Now we have over 75. So we have grown significantly and younger people are wanting to get involved, and you're going to be hearing from one of our chapter leaders. But if you know any of your grandkids, any high schooler, any college student that wants to get involved, that doesn't necessarily know anyone, whether it be their peers or how to get involved with the conservative movement, know that we exist and we are alive and well, and we're going to continue to grow and we're going to continue to live by our convictions just as you guys are. And please, please, please partner with us in any way that you can by visiting clubamerica.com or supporting your local chapters in the area. Ashley was saying there's a local chapter in Onslow County. There's also one in Wilmington. There's one in Jacksonville. There's multiple of these chapters that you guys can support in any way just by looking it up on clubamerica.com. Thank you so much for your time. You're going to be hearing from Alan, our chapter leader now.
Good afternoon. Okay. We have forgotten how to live freely. Now, what do I mean by that? Hold that thought and allow me to introduce myself. My name is Alan Rippey. I am the president and founder of the Club America Club in Wilmington, where I was born and raised. For those of you who do not know, Club America is the high school version of Turning Point USA. Now, our goal at Club America is to encourage young Americans to become civically engaged in their communities. One of the ways we do this is by asking fun and thought-provoking questions to people around our community. We have done these man-on-the-street interviews, as we like to call them, at the local college, boardwalks, and beaches. And a shameless plug here, if you'd like to see some of these, go to the Club America Wilmington Hub Instagram page. Now, while our videos are funny, and sometimes encouraging, and other times depressing, to say the least, we always try to make people consider the big picture. Do our founding principles matter? What has made America so successful? And are we living in a way that is worthy of our predecessors? As we celebrate our nation's 250th anniversary, I feel it is of the utmost importance to question and reflect on our founding, and question whether we still value and practice the principles which 56 men pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to protect. The Declaration of Independence, which we are all here to celebrate, states that all men are endowed by their Creator with three unalienable rights: the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. Now, the first right listed, the right to life, is so incredibly simple, and yet we still, as a society, manage to confuse it. The second right listed, the right to liberty, has become so incredibly convoluted, I believe the founders would despise our current state of society. We have come to believe liberty is the same thing as unbounded freedom. In essence, we believe the founding fathers gave us a right to do whatever we want, whenever we want. Very much to the contrary, the founders saw liberty as freedom bounded by virtue. We do not have the right to do whatever we want, whenever we want. Rather, we have the right to better our families, our communities, and our country. And yes, I'm talking to the vendors in the back as well. Now, each individual does this in his or her own unique way. And this is the third right stated in the Declaration of Independence, the right to pursue happiness. Another great misunderstanding in our world today is this word happiness. Happiness, as the founders saw it, is only achieved through temperance and self-control. Achieving happiness was the action of freeing oneself from worldly temptation, and in doing so, becoming a more free and a more prosperous soul. We can probably all notice this is not how society defines happiness today. In the current culture, achieving happiness is synonymous with achieving instant gratification. It's a good feeling rather than a healthy life. Thus today, as we celebrate 250 years of independence, I encourage all of us to reconsider if we are living in a way that is worthy of our founding. Now, one final thing. I personally believe, and hope you do too, that the best way to continue the legacy our founders left for us is to follow their example. In order to do this, I believe we need to look more closely at the document which changed the world. To conclude the Declaration of Independence, the founders appealed to the supreme judge of the universe for the rectitude of their intentions. Now, in case you don't know what that means, in plain English, the founders appealed to God to judge whether what they were doing was against His will or with His will. And now my question to you is, do we do this today? Do we appeal to the Creator of the universe to judge our actions and to let His will be done? You see, the founders did not see their cause as irrelevant from a religion or God, as much as the left and others try to convince us today. To the contrary, in the document which established this great nation, the United States, the men who wrote it asked God to judge their actions accordingly and punish or vindicate them as He saw fit. Well, the United States still stands today. By no means is our nation perfect. However, God does not require perfection. All He requires is faith. If we have not figured it out yet, a new person in political office, no matter how much we want him to, or her, can never and will never change our society. That being said, if our society is not directed back to the true north, our nation is sure to fail. Thus, it is not up to Washington or Raleigh to change our country or state. Rather, it is the duty of us, the individual citizen, to look inwardly, to humble ourselves before God, just as the founders did on July 4th, 1776 in Philadelphia. If our society can understand that freedom is a responsibility and not an excuse, we can chart a new course and change this nation from the inside out. Thank you all, and have a blessed weekend.
Welcome to the summer of 26. 250 years in the making. The whole world on our soil. One rhythm, one game. Let's go! Welcome to the land of the free, home of the brave, where we still believe. Raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land, welcome to the land of the free, home of the brave, where we still believe. Raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land of the free, home of the brave, where we still believe. Raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land of the free, home of the brave, where we still believe. Raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land of the brave, where we still believe. Raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land of the brave, where we still believe. Raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like
To join Club America, Onslow County.
Onslow County Club America, and I want you to join.
I want you to join Club America, Onslow County.
I want you to join Club America, Onslow County.
We want you to join Club America, Onslow County.
raise that flag, let the whole world see. There ain't no place like the USA to me. Welcome to the land of the loud, where the stars fly high and we sing it proud. Goal hits the net, let the stadium scream. USA, this is the American dream.
Alright, so next guy coming up is Don Brown. Those of you who don't know, he ran against Mr. Watley, which I'm not going to say it, but I voted for this guy. Right? It would have been a much better choice. But we go with what we got, right? We're Republicans, we bounce back. So Don?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I got two mics working. Y'all hear me okay? It's an honor to be on the here in Carteret County. You know, I grew up down the road a piece. My grandmama told me to take my hat off from talking, so I'll take it off, put it back on, but go Davey anyway. And grew up the road a little bit, and whenever I'm on the North Carolina coast, I feel like I'm at home. And Steve and Turning Point, thanks for the opportunity to be here and to say a few words. And Alaska did a great job. Our Turning Point guys did a great job. Craig, Mayor Burns, I can feel the heat on the podium already. You know, I love this time of year. Y'all like the hot weather or not? Who likes the hot weather? Yeah, you like the hot weather? Me too. I grew up, you know, working in tobacco. We used to call it backer in Martin County, about an hour north of here. And it brings back memories of home. And I'll tell you, I love this time of year, this season. You know, the months of May June, and July are the patriotic season, when you stop and think about it. In May, on the third Saturday of May is Armed Forces Day, when we salute those who are currently serving in our military, including my son, who's still a paratrooper in the Army after 10 years and served a year in Afghanistan. I hear some Army guys over there. Very good. All the way, as they would say in the 82nd. And then on the fourth and final Monday of May is the most sacred, I would say, of all of our patriotic holidays, and that is Memorial Day. We remember the Americans, our sons and daughters, who have given their all for this nation. A total of 1.1 million. Over 650,000 in the Civil War, 400,000 in World War II, 110,000 in World War I, 58,000 in Vietnam, 25,000 in the American Revolution, and it goes on and on and on. And then we come to June. And there are two great dates in June that I celebrate. June is also a great patriotic month. And the first is June 6th, where we remember the Allied invasion of Normandy. And I remember on that morning, General Dwight Eisenhower, who was the greatest American general, in my opinion, other than George Washington himself, sent a message out to the troops, and he said, "Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Great Crusade," to listen to these words, "today we embark upon a great crusade for the survival of our republic," hear this, "of our religion, and of our civilization." And that night, President Franklin Roosevelt went on the air and began to pray. Roosevelt prayed, that's right. And this is how most Americans found out about Normandy. He said, "Almighty God, our sons, the pride of this nation, today have embarked upon a mighty endeavor." And then he quoted Eisenhower's words for the survival of our republic. You hear that? Not our democracy, our republic. Of our religion, that is the Christian religion, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. And of our civilization, we are a nation that is enthralled with Western civilization. And those men announced the Great Crusade that morning and that night. And then on June 14th, you guys will appreciate this, we celebrate first the birthday of our United States Army. June 14th, 1775. You know, our Army, our Navy, of which I'm a veteran, and our Marine Corps, born respectively on October 13th and November 10th, 1775, are older not only just in the Republic, but then older than the Declaration of Independence themselves. Our armed forces are the block next to God Almighty Himself on which our freedom is built. June 14th is also Flag Day, and June 14th is also the birthday of our great Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump. You like that one? I figured you might. And then we move into July. And I'll come back to July just in a second, but I want to mention two other great patriotic holidays that we should remember. The first is September 17th, that is Constitution Day. And if you ask me, Constitution Day should be met with the same fervor and excitement and fireworks and bands as the 4th of July. Because we have the greatest republic on the face of the earth, and November 11th is Veterans Day. When we come back into July, it's always Independence Day. It's always July 4th. And this year we celebrate one of the seminal Independence Days in our nation's history. So often we remember the 56 men that gathered in Independence Hall that day, and we remember the words that they wrote. Sometimes we focused on the opening, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve themselves in the political bands which tie them to another, the opening words of the Declaration. Mostly we focus on the opening words of paragraph 2. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator. You hear that part? They are endowed by the Creator, not by government, not by Mondami, not by the Democrat Party, not even by the Republican Party, but endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But to me, the phrase from the Declaration often gets overlooked at the very last. depending upon divine providence, we mutually pledge to one another our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You in the back, wake up. Are you prepared to pledge your lives, your fortunes, and your sacred honor for the preservation of this constitutional republic to protect our republic, our religion, and our civilization? Either the answer is yes or no. And today, although our numbers are not as large as maybe we would like them to be, but the good Lord knows what numbers we need to be. Remember, it was only 56 men who signed their death warrants in Philadelphia on that day, who came together and allowed the good Lord to work a miracle, which is this nation. I want us to think about some of the miraculous acts, some of the hands of God that came into play that allowed the young nation and then the nation as it grew to succeed. Just about 5 weeks after that declaration was adopted by the Congress, General George Washington, the Continental Commander of the Continental Army, a ragtag group of guys with no military experience, was pinned down on Long Island with 9,000 troops, pinned down by the British with a superior army of about 30,000 under General Howe. General Howe was about to finish off the Continentals, and if he'd done so, we would not be here today. They were pushing on Long Island from the west to the east to the west. And as the nation was about to be exterminated before it started, came the night of August 29th and August 30th. All of a sudden that night, the good Lord sent wind whipping up the East River to prevent the British fleet from being able to enter the East River, and sent fog down to blind the British from the American forces. And that night, Washington was able to slip across that river, one small boat after another, all night long, until the sun came up and the fog thawed, and the British saw that the Americans weren't there. Christmas night, 1776, Washington is in a desperate situation. The British have been chasing him all over New York and down the Jersey Shore and here and there and everywhere, down Pennsylvania. And Washington has faced a situation where the enlistment contracts of his soldiers was about to expire at the end of the year on New Year's Eve. In other words, he's 1 week away from losing his army. The Americans needed a victory. And in one of the most bold and audacious moves overseen by the hand of God that night, Washington brings his army across Delaware, and they surprise Hessian troops. Hessian troops were Germans hired by the British, some of the most fierce warriors in the world. They defeat them, and they win the Battle of Trenton, and Washington is able to persuade his army to stay. They fought, and they endured. Are we prepared to endure? James 1, consider it pure joy, my brethren, when you face trials of many kinds, because we know that the test of our faith produces perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work. We must persevere as a state. We must persevere as a nation. We heard an eloquent address a moment ago from my friend Craig, where hell is at the gates of America, but hell will not be prevalent if we endure under the lordship of Jesus Christ. The Army won. 1780, the British tried to bring the battle into North Carolina. A group of patriotic North Carolinians went to a place called Kings Mountain, just south of Charlotte. And they kicked the British in the butt. And the British didn't know what had hit them. And that's where we hear the name Hornets' Nest, which is associated with a basketball team in Charlotte these days. But it came from the defeat of the British. The next year, in March of 1781, Cornwallis showed up at a place in Gilbert County called Guilford's Courthouse. And again, bands primarily of North Carolinians went there, and they kicked the British all the way down to Yorktown, and in October of 1789. A great miracle. A group of ragtag farmers with muskets and bayonets had defeated the world's greatest army. Tell me there is not an American destiny. Tell me we should not preach American exceptionalism. But that's not all. Let's go almost 100 years later. The United States is now embroiled in a civil war from 1861 to 1865. We're a nation divided. And frankly, during the first couple of years of the war, the South was getting the better of the North. South had superior generals. Robert E. Lee had been a hero in the Mexican War, graduated first in his class at West Point. His lieutenant and his principal assistant, Stonewall Jackson, might have been the modern equivalent now of George S. Patton. Attack, attack, attack. Lee decided, and historians will say, that the South's best chance to win the war would have been in 1862. So Lee tried to move the fight into the north. As he was going to a place near Antietam, his aides dropped his battle plans on the ground. They were wrapped around 3 cigars. The Northern forces found the battle plans, and McClellan said, if I can't beat Bobby Lee with these, I may as well go home. Well, McClellan did not beat Bobby Lee, but he saw the battle plans, and they held the battle to a stalemate and stopped the South advancing into the North. And that might have actually meant that our nation would have been divided. Hopefully slavery would have been ended. I believe it would have been. But that is divine providence, ladies and gentlemen. Even a year later, in a place called Chancellorsville, Stonewall Jackson, who by all accounts is a praying man, was shot in the arm by one of his own men from North Carolina. And Bobby Lee said, General has lost his left arm, now I've lost mine. That God's hand is on this nation. It's on this nation. We go into 1941, December 7th. We all remember that. The Japanese launched, as President Roosevelt said, a surprise attack. It was a surprise attack by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. They were trying to sink and destroy our navy. Why is this? Because if they had done that, Los Angeles and San Francisco and San Diego would have been an easy prey for them. But by the grace of God, the American aircraft carriers were not at Pearl Harbor. They were out to sea. And so we survived. And then, the next June in 1942, the Japanese had been winning the war in the Pacific. They bombed us at Pearl Harbor. They took the Philippines. They took the eastern, the western Pacific regions. America needed a victory. And then one day, on June 4th, one of our pilots happens to be flying a Catalina, flying through the air, sees an opening in the clouds, and sees the 4 Japanese aircraft carriers having launched an attack on Midway. He radios this in. We had not detected the carriers by radar, but radios in their position. Those 4 Japanese carriers had launched an attack on Midway Island. And when they came back in, they landed on the decks. They were refueling. And at that time, dive bombers from USS Yorktown, USS Hornet, and USS Enterprise struck at the most vulnerable position the Japanese would have, setting the carriers on fire and sinking 4 of them. Now that was the turning point of the war in the Pacific. The Japanese remained dangerous, but without their carrier fleet, they no longer could threaten either the West Coast or even Australia. The hand of God. The hand of God has been on this nation from start to finish. Last week, there was a sermon by a very prominent pastor in Charlotte. Very good reputation. But he preached a sermon that didn't quite land the right way. It was essentially an anti-patriotic sermon, and he made the point. He said America will never be a Christian nation because a Christian nation never would have tolerated slavery or abortion. But what he failed to say, first off, is that up to 800,000 lives. We now have a professor at the University of Minnesota saying that the total death toll in the Civil War could have been up to 800,000. 800,000 American lives shed in the Civil War to correct that atrocity, and we continue to battle against abortion. And I often thought, how would that pastor get away with it if he tried to step into Tehran and preach a sermon against the Iranian government, or Moscow and preach a sermon against the Russians, or step into Beijing and preach against Xi? Or think about this. Even across the border in Canada, during the COVID scam, they were arresting Christian pastors for hate speech. And they're doing the same thing in Britain. Hopefully the pastor appreciates the gift that we have been given with this constitutional republic. The Bible says that all good gifts come from heaven above. And you know, the gift of freedom is a gift from God. The question is, what will we do with it? We heard the parable, and I'm getting close, of the servant, the master, and the three servants. And to one servant he gives 5 talents, to another he gives 2, and to a third he gives 1. And he goes off, and he comes back, and the first one he said, "What'd you do with the 5 talents?" He said, "I've doubled them." "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." And then the second, "What'd you do with the 2?" "I've doubled them." "Well done." Then he comes to the third one. "What did you do with the gift I gave you?" "Well, I planted it in the ground because I was afraid you'd lose it and you'd get mad with me." And what does the master say? This applies to us, ladies and gentlemen. He says, "Get away from me, thou wicked and slothful servant. I'm going to take what I've given to you and give it to the guy that doubled from 5 to 10. What will we do with this gift? Will we sit on our cans and allow a real communistic wave sweep across this nation? A wave driven by Sharia law? Look, if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. Look what has just happened in New York City. A communist driven by Sharia, who should never have been in the country to begin with except for foolish Democrat immigration policies, is now the mayor of the largest city in the United States and pushing others. I see my man over there. I've learned how this works. I'm almost done speaking. They are threatening our way of life. The question is, what will we do? I say we show thanks for the gift we've been given. Remember those words that Lee Haywood put in the song, "I'm proud to be an American, for at least I know I'm free." How's it go? "I won't forget the men who died to give that right for me. I'll gladly stand up." Help me finish it out. "Gladly stand up next to you, and defend her still today. There ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA." Thank you all very much. God bless you, and thanks for being here. We love you all.
Give me a hand, folks. Look, this guy has been going all over the state trying to get people inspired and out there to make sure they get out and they vote, because it's critical to us going forward. The president can be president all he wants, but if he doesn't have the backing behind him, we'll go nowhere.
All right, next Epoch Times, we have Winston Liu. I might have pronounced it incorrectly. I apologize.
All right, Winston, let's go. All right.
I'm very grateful to be invited to this event. I'm not a politician. I'm not involved into any actually political. But I was a survivor of a prisoner conscience from China. Now I'm an engineer in North Carolina. Yeah. I stand before you today with deep humility and a sense of responsibility. What happened to me should never happen to you. I once considered myself fortunate, a member of China's academic elite, until 1999. Never in my darkest imagination did I expect what came next. Being thrown into detention and prison, pushed to the edge of a mental breakdown, and subject to brutal torture physically, mentally from 1999 to 2003. Why did the Chinese Communist regime target to me? Because I refused to give up my faith in Falun Gong. Back to 1999, I was a PhD candidate in China's prestigious university, Tsinghua University. People call it Chinese MIT. Before practicing Falun Gong, my academic life was filled up by modern science. However, my spiritual life was empty. Many times I was confused good and evil. When I saw people in my age didn't mind to take advantage from others, many times I asked myself, am I stupid not to compromise ethical values for personal gain? In a society, moral standards were collapsed. Selfishness and deception became the norm. Those who tried to live with selflessness and integrity were not admired. They were mocked by schoolmates and by neighbors. That's China. This is the consequence of CCP's wholesale destruction of China's traditional values, specifically during the Cultural Revolution in 1960s and the 1970s. I was fortunate to find the Falun Gong in 1998. Falun Gong is an advanced self-cultivation practice that facilitates the transcendence of mind, body, and spirit. It includes 5 steps gentle exercise and meditation, and emphasize the living according to the universal principle truth, compassion, and tolerance. It became extremely popular in 1990s in China. Falun Gong helped me reconnect with our 5,000 years spiritual heritage and filled the empty void in my heart. Unlike the communist regime, Falun Gong never forced me anything. My teacher, Mr. Li Hongzhi, asked for no money, no worship, and no demand. He simply taught us how to refine one's body and moral characters. I still remember those wonderful days, and I became a kinder, energetic person with inner peace. Suddenly, everything changed. July 20, 1999 is a day I never forget. CCP means Chinese Communist Party. CCP dictator Jiang Zemin launched the persecution campaign against the Falun Gong. Jiang made the policies, destroy their reputation, bankrupt them financially, eliminate them physically. I clearly remember that propaganda campaign was running 24/7 in all state-run medias. Falun Gong practitioners were portrayed as subhuman and demonized by fabricated narratives. The dehumanizing propaganda planted deep hatred in the minds of many Chinese people. Overnight, Chinese people were divided into 2 groups: those who practiced Falun Gong and those who didn't. And those who didn't were encouraged to monitor, harass, and report Falun Gong practitioners in schools, in workplaces, in neighborhoods, everywhere. And I turned my friends against me, my neighborhoods against me, my professors against me, even my parents and my sisters against me. Under communist rules, virtues like love, kindness, and family values must be rejected at the moment when they conflict with CCP party's demand. This is a core principle of the system called loyalty to CCP. Such propaganda has been broadcast for more than 27 years, even extending into the Chinese community in America. Very possible. A Chinese American might have a very negative view about Falun Gong if you may have the opportunity to talk to him, because they were planted deep hatred to Falun Gong when they grow up. My peaceful life was destroyed. At the beginning of a persecution, I lived in extreme fear. Later, I realized fear didn't help. On June 18, 2000, I appealed in Tiananmen Square, holding a banner for the end of persecution. In following 38 days, I was detained, charged with illegal Falun Gong gather. In America, every time I saw a protester freely holding a banner and signs to express their opinion, I was reminded of the power of true freedom of speech. In China, under communist rules, doing the same thing was an act that could cost you your life. A film called Unsilenced, based on the true event I was involved, won Audience Award at the 2021 Austin Film Festival. The film is about an American reporter and a team of Tsinghua University students risking everything to exposing the deadly propaganda against the Falun Gong. Please feel free to take a card on the desk of Epoch Times. It is a very good material to educate young generation. They need to know. On January 1st, 2001, police broke into my apartment in the early morning. They searched every room, took my personal property to police station, such as a bank card, computer, cash, and other valuables. Never returned. I was sent to a detention center. Later, I was accused of publishing information about Falun Gong on the internet and spreading it. And I was sentenced to jail for 3 years. In the detention center, the guard ordered other inmates to pour cold water over my naked body. It went on for half hour in the deepest winter in Beijing until my skin was frozen and I lost consciousness. They dragged me onto the floor. I woke up half hours later. In that moment, every trace of human dignity had been stripped away. It's a feeling I will carry with me for the rest of life. In prison, I spent 6 months in solitary confinement in a 20 square foot room, utterly deprived of human contact. Towards the end of jail time, I was at the edge of mental breakdown. In August 2005, I fled to Canada after being granted a scholarship to a PhD program by University of Calgary. When the plane departed Beijing airport, I breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, I said to myself, goodbye, endless fear. Goodbye, arbitrary arrest. Goodbye, mom and dad. Goodbye, brother and sister. My love, I'm sorry, they have to leave this country. Take care of yourself. I'm not the only one who was targeted. It's about 70 to 100 million Falun Gong practitioners being targeted in 1999 from all walks of life. The persecution is still going on in China today. Nowadays, Falun Gong is the largest group that CCP is targeting to eliminate. It is a religious genocide. Unfortunately, a lot of Americans never realize this because the mainstream media never reported this or avoid reporting this. And in addition, as you may know, the Uyghur ethnic group, some 20 million, is facing racial genocide by its communist regime. For more than 7 decades, countless people of faith have lost their lives under communist rule. Tens of thousands more, including house Christians, Falun Gong practitioners, are still being persecuted, even every single day. They endure endless abuse and torture simply because they choose moral courage over fear. I know this reality personally because I lived through the same brutality. You may wonder, why did the communist regime go after Falun Gong and other religions? And what can America learn from it? In 2017, Freedom House released a special report called The Battle for China's Spirit. Summarized the fundamental reason the CCP opposes Falun Gong. One of the reasons is ideological competition to win people's hearts and minds. Communist ideology can be boiled down to 3 pillars: materialism, atheism, political struggle. This idea forms the foundation of CCP's claim to legitimacy, and its demand for absolute loyalty. As a result, CCP turned community harmony into hostility, hatred, and constant conflict. These are fundamental teaching Marxism. For example, for generations, the village life was largely peaceful, and the relations between landlord and the tenants was not defined by constant confrontation. But CCP injected hatred into tenants through so-called class struggle theory. They need hatred to fuel struggling and to justify their vision of a new society with equity. Inciting people to turn against one another has always been a classic tactic of a communist regime. Remember that. The whole process ended up with wholesale destruction of traditional cultural values. Chinese people harmed each other, especially during Cultural Revolution in 1960s and 1970s. In alternative, Falun Gong effectively offered an alternative moral foundation when introduced to public in 1992. Its principal truths, compassion and tolerance, teach practitioners to let go of attachment to material gain, to stay with God, and to promote empathy and harmony among people. Therefore, Falun Gong became very popular in all walks of life, including lots of CCP top officials who held favorable views of Falun Gong. That's why in 1999, communist regime realized Falun Gong is a group they must eliminate, because Falun Gong promotes good instead of evil. That's the CCP promoted. You may wonder, hey, don't make it wrong. Look, CCP also promotes these values. They have in their book, in their document, there are a lot of good words like empathy, harmony, justice. You're 100% right. Long list. However, have you sensed any of these fine values from what CCP has done to me, to my family? No. Unfortunately, you are trapped by CCP's strategy. These beautiful words are used to attract the young generations and highly educated intellectuals who have kind hearts and wish to protect the vulnerables and to create a better society. But the reality is this. Since CCP took power in 1949, it launched several political movements and killed lots of highly educated intellectuals used to support them. Why? Because these people spoke out against the CCP's hypocrisy after they took power. When they realized the CCP used a beautiful promise to fool people. Actually, CCP harm people, harm society, and harm morality. Under communist authorities, people who have independent, critical thinking, and they cannot be loyal to CCP, have only one choice: a miserable life. It was what my parents taught me frequently during my childhood. I'm not a good boy in their eyes because their education didn't work out on me. Remember, inciting hatred, destroying tradition, demand loyalty are three of the most important features of communist regime. Unfortunately, lots of Americans still hold very superficial understanding views about communist country. I'm very sad about that. American school systems failed to educate your kids to what the real communist is. If they knew what they would sacrifice under communist authority, I believe they would think twice. I hope my insight about CCP can help you understand what is unfolding in the USA today. I've left China for freedom. I don't want to lose freedom again. I believe you don't either. But America is on a very dangerous way to the communist country. I saw that. I believe universal principle of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance exist above time and human opinion. What is true remains true, even when it is ignored. The good is still good, even when it is persecuted. Those who return to tradition, reject communism, will be rewarded by the God. God bless America. Thank you.
We have to stand like we've never stood before, like the third monkey trying to get on the ark. And we have to stand our ground for our children. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI has to die, DIE. We have to teach our children to love God, to love our country, to love our families. Hate and evil has no place in our lives. Get it out. We are Americans. We bleed red, every single one of us. And let me tell you something. What got me off the chair and my blessed assurance to stand and run for office is my children. My children is the reason why I get up and I'm doing this. We've had attacks, we've had threats, we've had everything that I'm sure that we're the only candidate that probably has in this race. But it's because we are bold enough to say the things that need to be said. We will not tolerate anyone taking our liberties ever again. What we saw in 2020 and the tyranny there, the mandates, and what they expected us to do, and the federal government even throwed around the idea of going around checking to see if you've been vaccinated house to house. Oh no, come hell or high water, we're going to take the country back and say absolutely not. We're going to stand on our principles, and I hope you will do the same, because America is worth fighting for. Your children is worth fighting for. And I want you to be bold, not because of me, not because of yourself, but because of the next generation that's coming. Stand up and stand up now and be counted. We have nowhere else to go. This is the last place of freedom. And we have an obligation to every soldier and every veteran that ever wore the uniform and stood in front of harm's way. We have obligations. This is our country. We are the majority. We are the Americans. We are the ones who make the cogs in the wheels turn. And it is us who will do everything possible to save this country from the leftist radicals who would stand up and tell us that men can be pregnant. There's more genders than Heinz 57 sauce can have ingredients. We have to stand. It's the only common sense that we have. And I need your vote. I need your prayers. I need your giving in the election. But here's what I need you to do most. Get off your blessed assurance and be an engaged citizen. Be informed. And take a stand where you are. And having done all to stand, keep on standing. We stand together with one blood. We stand together under one flag. And we kneel under one cross. And my friend, let me tell you something. This country has been good to every one of us. Life may not have been good to us, but this country has been a blessing to us. And we have an obligation to stand up, to take that red, white, and blue, and to carry it even farther. We have an obligation to our children to raise that standard of morality. And I'm going to say it like this too, to raise that standard of righteousness. Because we must do that for the future generations. And then, my friend, we have an obligation to every veteran that ever served and put on the uniform. We have an obligation to every soldier that shed their blood. We have an obligation to those who charged up Normandy with every tenacity, knowing that they would never return, but yet they charged in the face of danger. And here is our time. Here is our time to stand strong, to stand tall, and to stand boldly in our day. God bless you.